with red-hot stories from post-game. Interviews, analysis, debate the hour. Right here at the Growler.
All right, welcome into the latest edition of the Walkout. Paul Dehner Jr., Jay Morrison here with you on a night where the preseason, thank God, has finally come to an end. The Cincinnati Bengals, it says here, remain winless in the preseason. It's a familiar trend.
Yeah, back-to-back winless preseasons. First time in franchise history. Season's over.
Not super interested in winning in the preseason. They lose 27-14 to the Indianapolis Colts on a night where the Bengals really didn't play any of their starters, really. Nobody. If you were on the field tonight, it's not a great sign for how they feel about you potentially having a major impact on this year's team or maybe you're hurt. But those are the two levels of people, because this was not starters on the side, not messing with it anymore, and a deeper look at sort of the very back end of the roster and practice squad guys was what we got here tonight in the game against Colts.
Somewhat. I think Jordan Battle's going to have a decent role in this team. He did play tonight. He had maybe the biggest defensive play they had all night. It's more a matter of they don't have a lot of safeties. They just had to play him tonight. But you're right. Even not just the starters, a lot of the regular backups were in street clothes watching this game tonight. It was a classic. You need a brochure. You need a program to know the players.
Yeah. We know who they are, and there's a lot of, hand-wringing about the 53-man roster that's going to happen now going forward. Outside of, and we can dive a little bit into some impact on that here as we get going. Was there anything else that stood out to you, performance that was, or anything you saw or heard that was notable?
A non-performance.
Okay.
How long ago was it when you didn't have Zach Carter on your 53? He got the "you're in, you're good, don't even dress" treatment tonight.
Yeah.
That surprised me. He's a guy I thought that they would have in there. But the attrition is so great at defensive tackle right now, where that makes sense that he didn't play. But yeah, that one surprised me. Germaine Burton playing as much as he did, as late as he did, that was a bit of a surprise. The big one was Travion Williams. I mean, he was in there in the fourth quarter still. A ton of carries, a ton of reps. Very odd for a guy that is an absolute lock to make this roster.
Yeah. Currently, certainly a lot to make the roster, and we'll see what happens. There's a lot of back and forth that's going to happen. We'll continue to talk about the possibility that Samaje Perine could be let go by Denver and could end up back here in Cincinnati, and maybe that could affect Travion Williams slightly. All of that kind of in play. One thing that stood out to me, though, beyond the game and whatever that was tonight, was something that Zac Taylor said after the game, and that was specifically talking about Joe Burrow's performance in the joint practice. And we were there and we documented it. And if you watched us on the YouTube channel, you know that Joe played well, and we thought that he really showed that he could make every throw. Zac Taylor called it maybe one of his best practices of the entire year, and reminiscent of Joe when he was fully healthy last year. And I think if you want to hear a resounding statement of approval and that kind of last stamp about what Joe did during the course of camp and what level he's currently playing at, I thought that was, a pretty notable thing said by Zac after the game.
Yeah, and telling, too, that he said that Joe lobbied. He wanted to play in this game. He wanted the reps, and Zac said, I was well aware that he wanted to play, but he wasn't going to play. But, if Joe's feeling that good, that makes sense that he would want to get out there and test it against a live offense in this kind of game. But yeah, for Zac to say that it was his best practice of the year was telling, because there were some good ones. Yeah, there were some shaky ones, but there were some good ones. We talked about on the previous show. I watched the defense, you watched the offense, so you have a better assessment of what it looked like than I did. But from everything you said on that last show, it sounds like he is good to go. And you get Jamar back, this offense hits the ground running, and the season's off.
Yeah, well, I mean, good, just a good thing to hear. Certainly, it's the type of thing that you wanted to hear at this point, but a strong statement from Zac Taylor in that regard. Now, as far as we talk about other things that went on in this game, you mentioned Germaine Burton. This might feel familiar. It's the fourth quarter. The scrubs are in for both teams, and there's Logan Woodside throwing a go ball to Jermaine Burton, and he's catching a touchdown. It's kind of the only way the Bengals really score touchdowns, apparently.
Not kind of. It is the only, well, defensive touchdown.
Defensive touchdowns, too. And T. Higgins had a touchdown. But, that's really kind of been all they've really mustered. Yeah. And the question, there's the same question that we've been talking about. And I know Germaine Burton is a popular topic. I know that people are infatuated with the talent and where he was drafted and what he could be. There's just two sides to this. There is the side of Jermaine Burton is going and doing stuff that you knew he could do. He's very talented. Like, everybody knows that. The question is, how do you get to the point that you're doing what Zach Carter was doing, like you talked about, or doing what Andre Yosibach was doing, which was sitting and watching instead of being out there late in the fourth quarter and not even playing all the snaps even earlier in the game. With when Logan Woodside was out there in the first half. And so that's because he's just so far away from being there with this offense and developing trust and comfort that they feel like he's going to be doing absolutely everything the way that it needs to be done. And that means everything to Joe Burrow, and developing that trust with Joe Burrow. It's just something that has to happen for them to feel like he's able to be out there earlier and start to make those plays. It's more than just, hey, he's got the talent to go win and down the field. He does. I mean, we saw he leads this team in receiving by a long shot in the preseason. Like, he can go do that in the fourth quarter, but it's so much more than that. And it's a process, I believe was the phrase that Zac Taylor used afterwards. And it's one that Burton just isn't close to right now, and is far off on that rotation, because they need to see it grow. They need to see it be a lot more for them to be comfortable putting him out there.
Yeah, and maybe this is a way to light the fire. It's not just, okay, he's not ready yet, so we have to do this. Maybe part of it is, well, let's send a message here that you need to prepare a little more. You need to take better notes. You need to study more. You need to get in the playbook and understand this offense better. I did a story on Muma Jongmeta, and James Betcher, linebacker coach, was raving about his preparation and how everything that he's done off the field is more impressive even than what he's done on the field. And you just don't get the sense that's the same with Jermaine Burton. And it is. It's, again, a guy with all the talent in the world, and they need to figure out a way to get him where they expect him to be when they drafted him. We were talking about him being wide receiver 3. He's wide receiver 6 right now.
Yeah.
Trent Irwin got the night off. Andre Yosibach got the night off. Everybody got the night off except Charlie Jones and Jermaine Burton in that starting group, or not in the starting group, in the 53 group.
In the 53 group, exactly. And really, that's will he even be active on game day situation?
Yeah.
A sixth receiver, you're not necessarily talking about somebody who's going to be active on game day. You keep 5 up. So it could be a thing where he just is staying inactive until something maybe happens to somebody in front of him early in the season. And maybe that would be good for him. We'll see. But I just think there's a lot of excitement over people seeing the highlights, and they're going to replay, and everyone's going to be like, draft steal. But it's just, they're not there with him right now like that.
No,
they're just not. And so it's fun to think of for the future, but it's going to be a thing that's going to take some time to develop behind the scenes before it's something that's going to be fun for the present. Okay, that's the Jermaine Burton conversation right there. You mentioned Jongmeta. I think there's some interesting things. Anybody change your mind tonight on when you maybe previously had on your 53?
Well, I don't know. I mean, possibly Carlos Davis.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody else really up or down either way. It felt like it was such a set 53. Now, we don't know what they can put 2 guys on IR and bring them back, put them on IR before they even set the 53. So that gives them a couple extra spots to play with. So maybe somebody sneaks on that way. But yeah, I thought he looked really good.
Yeah.
And if McKinley Jackson's probably going to be one of those guys that goes on IR, and they need a nose tackle in there. And he wasn't just stuffing the run. He had 2 quarterback hits. He was rushing the passer. And so it was impressive. And he played the whole game. He was still in there in the fourth quarter, and he looked gassed at the end, but he had I said it earlier that every final preseason game, someone has that moment that makes you consider that maybe they should get on it. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. he's a guy that I think could have taken a big step tonight.
Yeah, because the defensive line room is very weird and very hard to predict right now because you have these two injuries between Jackson and Murphy that the diagnosis on that of when will they be back will be a big part of whether they decide to just keep them and have them inactive or actually put them on IR for the 4 games and then have them be able to return for week 5. Well, Murphy, a month, 4 to 6 weeks, like where does that land? Are you going to be back for the Washington game, the Carolina game? Neither. So the specifics of what they feel about both of those injuries can go decide whether Davis makes it, whether you have an extra spot to play with. Maybe you're looking on the waiver wire. Maybe you're bringing – there's a lot of different options that you can have right now. You have Joseph Osai. Cedric Johnson, I think, has played really well. And for a 6th-round pick – gives you some hope of somebody who can be comfortable to have as a 4th edge who's mostly playing special teams for you on game day. But if you need him to step in, could do some nice things because he's shown that. And I think you build some faith and some trust that way with what he has done here over the course of this preseason too. But there's a lot of weird moving parts at the back of that, starting with those injuries and then trickling down to just a bunch of guys that you're not super sure about. All these defensive tackles they brought in. It's just, are they going to be looking elsewhere as teams start letting go some of those guys? That certainly seems like a possibility where if they like somebody that's on the waiver wire, they could pluck him. If they really feel like they need that big body nose tackle that they're just lacking when you don't have Jackson healthy, that could be a place they could go, or where they would just say, you know what, we think Davis could work for us in that regard. I mean, the tackle for loss he had was not against Joe Schmo. No, that was Ryan Kelly. And he was able to beat him to get back, and a 4-yard loss on a run play. He had a big hit right in the stomach of the quarterback. I mean, those are real plays against real guys, and that can be the type of thing that makes Duke Tobin say, you know what, that's enough. Let's just go with the guy we got here in the building that we know a little bit of what we're seeing.
Well, and another guy that falls in that bucket is a guy, you talk about Burrow's trust. I mean, Duke's trust, Zach's trust. Jay Tufele's been here for a while, and they talk about it all the time, just being a gamer, and he just shows up, makes plays in the games. He is one of those big body guys. He was hurt for a while in training camp. He missed a couple weeks. He's been back. He had a sack in the joint practice. He got back and had a pressure in this game. So again, that's pass rushing elements, but he is a guy that you could plug in and ride with for a couple weeks, depending on how short McKinley Jackson's going to be out.
Yeah. So the defensive line is kind of a mess. I think the defensive back situation is really interesting too. Mm-hmm. You've got 5 safeties, seems like something that's probably going to happen that doesn't usually or often happen, but Dejon Anthony has forced their hand there, I think. I guess there's maybe a question of Tyson Anderson, but I just think he's so valuable. They liked him so much on special teams last year. He's healthy enough. He's out there playing tonight. You got to feel like Tyson Anderson's going to make it strictly for his special teams prowess. Dejon Anthony is a guy he's in their dime. He was in their dime starting package against Tampa Bay. I mean, they really like him. And so I think he forced their hand. So are you going to keep 5 corners, 6 corners? Josh Newton tonight, who's had a really nice camp, really nice preseason. We talked about him a lot. He's had some ups and downs, but working almost solely in the slot tonight. So if he can play a backup slot, we know Dax Hill could kick inside to play slot. It's kind of a natural spot for him. Even DJ Turner could. If you have all these guys that could play backup slot, is there reason to keep Jalen Davis on the roster as the last of those corners, or you just go with 5 corners to try to even it out and have 5 corners and 5 safeties? I think that's going to be interesting things. How that plays out is even somebody like Alan George out there in sticks as an outside guy who's had a pretty solid camp and some solid preseason games. Didn't have all of it here tonight, but has for them been pretty good. Do you need to do that? I think that last spot of what happens there in the corner room is going to be kind of interesting to see what direction they go, because they do have versatility in the guys that are in front of them.
Yeah, but before we knew the length on Myles Murphy's injury, I was going between 10 offensive linemen or Jalen Davis. And I went with Jalen Davis just because kind of the same thing. They trust him on special teams. They use him a lot on special teams. I mean, you're right. There's so many other options they could go with in the slot, but he's a guy that I think He plays vice on punt return. He can be a gunner on punt coverage. He's done it in the past. I think they lean on that, just like the Tyson Anderson thing, a guy that Darren Simmons trusts and they know on special teams. He's been here for a while. I just think that he would get the edge over a 10th offensive lineman. Now, if it's a totally different discussion, if it's Jalen Davis first somewhere else, then maybe Jalen is one of the ones that's let go. He'll obviously be here on a practice squad. He's a definite guy that would bring back if they do let him go. But it's weird. There's so much that's locked down, but then the part that's not, it's not an A or a B. It's if this, then that. It's like an Excel formula. It's just really hard to piece together.
Of course, it's like an Excel formula. And really all of our lives are just one big Excel formula at this point. But so much of it will end up being about who can you get to the practice squad? How many people can you keep in the building? And so that plays into the decision too. Who can you sneak through? Tanner McLaughlin, a guy who's a 6th-round pick at tight end. The thought is 5 tight ends. You're going to keep 5 tight ends. We hardly saw Tanner McLaughlin tonight. He was hardly playing at all. And there's 2 theories to that. There is, they don't think he's good enough to play, or no need to show anybody any of Tanner McLaughlin because we know that you're trying to get him onto that practice squad and you want to keep him in the building so he can develop in the background, but you're not going to keep 5 tight ends. So I don't think Tanner McLaughlin making this team, it seems a far-fetched. You've got your big 4 there and another nice night for Eric All, but the actual thought of getting him on the practice squad is what they're going to be thinking about and making sure that they can do that right now. Him probably and Cam Grandy, the other tight end. So all of that stuff plays into it. Keeping as many guys in the building as they can is going to play into it. And that's all discussions that they will be starting now from this point forward. Now, Tuesday at 4:00 is the cut down day and the cut down time. And at that point, they'll get down to 53. There will be a day for all of waivers to happen, and they can pick guys off from other teams. And if they do, then they'll have to get rid of somebody from this team. And there's another wave of that. And we go on and on and on as they keep building the team. But certainly there's spots you could see additions, trades. This is the time of year they've done some of those. Could all be in play. It's going to be a busy weekend for the personnel staff as they try to sift through all of this and figure out the best way to put the puzzle together for them. But the rest of it's the hay's in the barn. Right?
Yeah.
There's hay. It's in the barn. That's it. The players have done it.
Call your shot. A guy on the 53-man roster on September 8th for the Patriots is not in the building right now.
Yes.
What are the chances? Yes.
Yes. I think very good.
Yeah.
I mean, Samaje Perine, first of all.
Right.
I mean, just it feels inevitable at this point. His cap hit is just so big for Denver. He's the 4th running back there right now. Like the idea of them not deciding to save $3 million so they can have Perine as a 4th running back just doesn't seem very likely. And if he does end up a free agent or cut and available, you know exactly who's interested in calling him, and that's going to be the Cincinnati Bengals. So that alone, and I think there could be more than one. I think there could be more than one addition, certainly, to that defensive tackle position we talked about. Seems like a prime spot that you could see somebody added depending on what teams are getting rid of. And who knows, maybe the trade lines will start lighting up. Maybe we'll have a little trade to talk about, which could be fun. So maybe they can turn Billy Price into BJ Hill again. You never know. It seems highly unlikely.
Yeah, that was a heck of a trade.
All right. Well, that'll wrap it up for us. Thanks to everybody that came out. I hope everybody enjoyed the Green Day and Smashing Pumpkins concert that came out to our live show today. And those of you that are coming down to the game, it was great to see all the Growl pals that showed up. We had a great time doing it. Our next show is going to be the season preview show live at BetMGM Nation Kitchen and Bar at the Banks. That will be on Thursday, the 5th. That is the night that the Chiefs and Ravens start the season. They will start the season at 8:30, but we'll start previewing the Bengals season with all our friends in the Bengals media at 7:00, giving all of our thoughts and takes and predictions and pandering and all the things that have happened. You guys know the show. We've done it before. We're looking forward to having that going on down there. So we hope to see you at that. In the meantime, plenty more pods and everything coming your way. Jay on Pro Football Network, me on The Athletic. You can catch all of it. So thanks, everybody, for hanging with us, and we'll talk to you next time. Have a good one.